Right. It's got everything that it says live streamed. Right. Let's go with that. Okay. So, right. Good. Right. Well, today, welcome. We're here to talk about how to remove self-doubt and find purpose, so that you can live in your purpose. And really, if anything resonates with you, at the end, I'll tell you about how we can go forward and how I could help you with removing self-doubt and living your purpose. But I really want to start by just saying thank you very much for being here with me. And it's so lovely to be here on this, not wet Friday, but very, very cloudy Friday. Tomorrow, I'm going to do a little bit of skydiving. So that's going to be interesting. So it's a tandem jump. So it's not such a big thing, but it's a little bit higher than I've done before. So that's good. And it's a bit exciting and a bit of letting go and a bit of all of those things. Always good for the heart, so that we get to really know that we're alive. So anyway, for those of you that don't know, I'm Sharon Ann Lovegrove. I'm the creator of the I Can model. I'm a psychotherapist and a women empowerment coach, or feminine coach. And I help women with imposter syndrome who are stressed, overwhelmed, and depleted because they're so busy trying to hide themselves so that they won't be found out that they're not a fraud. So this is what's really going on for them. So they don't feel good enough or worthy enough or lovable enough. And so that's what's the deep core. And they take on behaviors that seriously limit themselves. Some of those behaviors may be that they really say no to others. They worry what people think. They put others first. They put a lot of pressure on themselves to be perfect, or they disappear themselves so that they're like a sophisticated hider in everybody else's realm, greatly seen, but actually not seen at all. So I coach them into mental fitness so that they can confidently step into their sovereignty and take back control. Say no, reset their relationship boundaries, and have a lifestyle that's healthier, happier, more loving, and feminine. And who wouldn't want that? Who wouldn't want that? So yeah, and you know, one of the things with imposter syndrome is very often that we don't feel there's such a disconnect from ourselves that we actually, it doesn't matter what we do, we don't feel in ourselves, and we feel a fraud. And that means that when we have successful times, we don't often really kind of are able to accept that and feel it and know it and honor it and go, wow, okay, let's stay with this for a little bit because it's exciting. No, we're on to the next thing, on to the next thing, on to the next thing, never taking time because of that internal voice that's constantly driving you on. But I digress a little bit. We're going to go on to the idea how to remove self-doubt and bring clear purpose into your life. It's a really big topic, and I'm probably only going to talk about a small part today. So I want to just start here by asking you, what is the purpose for us existing? What's the purpose that we exist? Do you believe that you're here for a purpose? Do you believe that you have a purpose? You can put that in the chat. Is there something? If you have a purpose, write it down. It'd be great. If you don't know yet, write that down too, because this is all information. If that's there, it's just about what's going on right now. But for me, I believe that really so strongly that everybody has at least two purposes, at least two purposes. And when I say at least two purposes, I believe that From the very beginning of time, and certainly from the very beginning of your life, you've had the purpose to exist, right? You've had the purpose to exist. When you were not even thought of, there was already a plan in co-creation that you would exist. So, excuse me, it really doesn't matter whether we're here or not. The fact was that there was a plan somewhere along the line that those coordinates, those bits of information, those bits of the universe came together to ignite the spark that is you. And from the very moment of that divine spark, whatever that spark is, and we'll talk a little bit about that, you started to expand. You started to expand. And from that moment, the cells didn't have any discussion about whether we were going to expand or not. They didn't have any discussion about that. They just decided that we've now got this energy. We're now in this space. All the coordinates are aligned. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go, and I'm going to expand. Okay. So the whole purpose of being created is for the purpose of expansion. Yeah. So it's really good to think about it like this, because very often we get caught in our doubts, we get caught in our worries, we get caught in everything that we do, and we forget this one magnificent event that happened, which was that moment of the divine spark, the moment when electricity entered your body. Yeah. Now, today I was a bit, I'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later, but today I was having a discussion with someone, and I really started to think about something that has with the Kabbalah, where we all know that everything starts from nothing. So before you existed, there was nothing. You were just potential. You were potential in the eggs that your mother was carrying when you were in your grandmother's tummy with your mum. So there was that potential right there of you existing. Yeah. But it was always just in potential. So out of the nothing, out of the potential, there was a spark. There was something where things came together and they created a spark. They created a spark that allowed electricity to begin to flow throughout our body. And we are pure electricity. Every cell in our body is formed with anions and cations. And we know that everything is to do with a charge. So you were this divine spark in that moment that created you to be alive. And once you were alive, then it kicked into action everything that was going to make you the unique person or the unique genetic makeup that you were going to be. And this is really what I want you to just sink into today. I want you to just really sink into this understanding, this deep understanding. Because when we doubt our existence, we have to understand that everything has conspired for you to exist. Yeah, everything has conspired for you to become something. And it's when we don't sit and think about the enormity of that we sit filled with doubt, unworthiness, worry about things. So your primary directive from the very first moment was to survive and expand. That's the order. That's the command from your command center, from the creator that is you. All right. So out of the darkness came a spark of light that created consciousness. And from their consciousness imprinted everything so that all our genes and all our body could then start to go into formation that would allow us as this human to exist in the way it is. So it's not you that might drive the purpose, certainly this biological purpose. Life drives you. Life is driving you to live. Life is driving you forward. Okay, whether you want it or not. And the only way that life can't exist is when there's no electricity. Yeah. So when the electricity goes, life can't exist. And how and what creates the electricity? There's another question. What creates the electricity? Maybe you can put that in the chat. What for you creates the electricity? What if I were to say your heartbeat? Your heart is the first organ, those primary cells in your heart. Before your heart is even formed, your heart starts to pulsate. Those primary heart cells pulsate. And they create the rhythm for your life. They create what is going to be the essence of your expansion. So we experience all of this. So when we're born, we have all of this. And many of you may have known when you were little that you had a purpose. I knew I had a purpose. I just didn't kind of know what it was, but I always knew. I knew when I came here that I'd come from somewhere else. I'd always known that as a child. Some people don't know that, but I always knew that. So there was always something there, and I always felt quite depressed because I couldn't quite get what it was that I needed to do. Yeah, I kind of was floating in lots and lots and lots of netherlands. I didn't understand what my purpose was. I was good at a lot of things. I've been given huge amounts of gifts, but I didn't know. I loved doing them all. I didn't know how to bring them together, to harness them together so that I could create something that was one. So it wasn't able to create that life in the way that I wanted. And I think that part of our purpose is learning how to bring back all of the things in our life so that we come back to something, that we create something that becomes one. So the idea is consciousness creates the material. So you have thought and feeling creates something that then acquires mass, acquires charge, acquires energy. So, but yeah, life goes through these complexities, and unfortunately, when we go through complexities, we go through what happens in all our lives, and we end up experiencing life, or life happens to us, and then we make decisions about that. And a lot of the decisions we make, certainly as girls, is I'm not important, I'm not good enough, I'm powerless, I'm worthless, I'm unlovable, I don't have, I'm wrong. And we can have all of these beliefs, and they can seriously affect our prosperity and happiness and success. Because our purpose is the activator. So we talked about harmony and activation, but when we align to a purpose, it activates us. It increases the electricity. It increases the energy because it gives meaning to what we're doing. So purpose is all about always moving to our North Star, moving to the North Star and orientating that, and constantly orientating and activating to that. Yeah, it's interesting. Is purpose and vision the same thing? Well, they use the same things, but purpose is more about, if you think of the word purpose, it's purpose. putting air out, it's pushing, it's force. All right. So it's directional in how we move forward and how we move in the world. A vision we can look at. A vision doesn't activate us. Purpose does. Because purpose is about bringing the energy into being, into the vision, creating the vision and bringing energy into the vision, activating the vision so that it becomes our North Star. But as I said, when we have self-doubts that are based on those limiting beliefs, they all create a self-fulfilling prophecy. Why is that? Why do they create a self-fulfilling prophecy? When we have doubts and self-beliefs and things like that. Why do they do that? You can put that in the chat if you like. Well, from my perspective, I think in my way of working with my clients, I definitely think it's because we're doing the pattern. And the pattern, when we do our pattern, the mirror, the universe mirror reflects that back to us. And unfortunately, what we don't see is the one side of the mirror. When we're looking at ourselves in the mirror, are we really looking at ourselves or are we looking at the image in the mirror? Because that's a really interesting thing. And while I was just thinking about it now, and I hadn't thought of it but it is interesting when you look at the mirror and you look at yourself, you're not really paying attention to the you on some level. You're not paying attention to the you that's creating this image that's in there. So we often end up kind of being disconnected from the fact that the universe or the world or whatever we are experiencing is mirroring back only what we are doing inside. Yeah. So how might this show up in our lives when we have self-doubt? How might it show up when we think we're not good enough, or we think we're not worthy, or we think that we are not important? All of these things. How might we show up, or how might we experience it? Let's go with that first. How might we experience it? Well, if I maybe doubt myself and think I'm not worthy and think I might not do all of those things, I might experience people, if you don't value your opinion and if you don't value your worth, people won't value you. So from what their perspective, what your perspective of them would be that, you would feel frustrated that they don't listen, that they ignore you, that they speak over you, that they totally take your ideas away. They totally own your ideas because you don't feel the value. You can't stand up for those values in a way that's useful and can be heard in the right way. Or you might find that you've learned to give to others because you've learned that actually that is what they need, and by giving to them they would reciprocate, but they don't. So you might find that you get presents that you don't particularly want, or people don't seem to really know what you want, but you seem to know what they want. Maybe sometimes you go off the mark, but it could be more that actually you have more of an idea of what they want and they don't of you. You might find that you spend a long time kind of explaining things to people. So going around and around and around and around, and people start to get irritated. They tell you, hurry up, be finished now. Okay, I get that quite a lot sometimes. And certainly in the past, I have had that. Or you feel frustrated in the fact that you're not having an effect. You're not out there. You're seeing everybody else going out there, but whatever you say is not creating the effect that you want. So you can't see that. But also on the other thing is what is it like for other people when they see someone that's, basically unsure of themselves or don't value themselves or whatever? Well, they might, if someone that doesn't value themselves but becomes very prickly, it'll be like you have to, and they're in a controlling position. It might be like you have to walk on eggshells. That's what they might feel like, or they might feel that you're overbearing or bullying even. They might forget to include you in lunch dates or things like that. Or they you might just honestly see that they start glazing their eyes as they start talking. And they may seem less empathic. Yeah. So you may have an experience in a way of feeling quite alone. Other things that you might do, which you might not necessarily think about, but you might put yourself in the limelight. When I say put in the limelight, you put it in the limelight so that you can disappear yourself. So like a superwoman, a super person in charge, they do everything and everything for everybody, but actually very few people truly see them. So, or you might find that you're getting panic attacks because things are worrying you a little bit. So you're avoiding things, and all of a sudden you get to something and you haven't learned the skills for it. That could be. Or you may find that you struggle to speak in a powerful way when you want to make a point. So what happens is you kind of become, all the feeling comes rushing out and you become overly exuberant because nobody's been listening to you. And as you said, you've been finding yourself rabbiting on and things haven't gone well. So, well, why are you here? You want to hear, what can we do about this? So what can we do? Have you got any ideas what you might be able to do? How to get out of this pattern? Have you any clue what might be helpful? Well, one of the key things for me, and it's probably informing everything that I do from now on, and has been informing it, but I hadn't really quite fully understood this power structure, the power paradox that women experience. And certainly women from 45, and I know that there are young girls that still experience this right now, depending on certain kinds of cultures. But the power paradox is that for centuries and centuries and centuries and centuries, women have been in traditional roles. And as women in traditional roles, we are pretty good at doing a lot of things. So we're pretty good at juggling, yeah? And what's happened is a lot of women have come into now working, and they're now in the power paradox because they want to work, but they also have to take care. They're the caretakers of society. And so they're in that position where they're doing even more than they did before. And things are getting really, really difficult. And so the power paradox is being able to have that and also be okay with perhaps not being seen as that person that has to be the one that does everything for everyone, and where that sense of power can lie. So it's that power paradox that often makes us doubt ourselves, often tells us you're not a good mom, or you're not a good friend, or you're not a good this, or you're not a good that. It's that power paradox that often kicks in. It's that conflict that happens between the connection with others and our desire for expanding and becoming more. Yeah. So it's really useful to look at this power paradox before you think about anything else. So we want to check what we're carrying that doesn't belong to us, what belongs to culture, but doesn't really belong to me. So when I had my first vision of you are the creator, you are creation, yeah, that was quite hard because I was very strongly Catholic. I went to church every Sunday, and I was pretty much in the space of that I must kind of be in this position where I have to supplicate. And then you get told this, and it's like really powerful, and oh, that's got to change. But deep down inside, there are a whole lot of things that are going on that start to make you feel very unsure and start to doubt a lot of the kinds of ideas or concepts or beliefs that you have, and can cause a lot of conflict. Some women find it really difficult. I mean, certainly women that have abortions or women that have, mothers really get put into that conflict quite a lot. Carers get put into conflict a lot. So it's this kind of conflict that is the power paradox. And that doesn't belong to us, because you don't see men doing that necessarily. Yeah, it's the roles which are attributed that cause us to be confined, that then cause us to have anxiety about not being this perfect person, about not being there for others, about disconnecting. And the most important thing is to really, truly understand, for women, it is painful to disconnect. It is incredibly, it's virtually so agonizing that often we will put our success on hold because it's such a powerful thing, and we limit ourselves by not going forward. So this is really important. So I want you to just really sink into that thought and that idea that there's always going to be this power paradox, and we need to look at how that's affecting your life. It's a cultural issue. It's a cultural inherited issue. And then the other thing is we have to learn to look into the deep truth that we have a right to exist. That divine spark created us so that we would exist, so that we would experience and we would become the individualized aspect of the Creator. And to embrace the one thing is that we came alive because of that spark. Before then, we didn't come alive, but now we are. And that you have every right, you have full permission to become who you want to be. All right? So I want you to feel that very deeply. You can feel that full permission to just know you have a right to exist. And what gives you that right is the right that is equal and the same to any other person on this planet. The fact that when the divine spark sparked, you began. That is your right to exist. Okay. Other people can take away your life, or you could take your own life, but until such time, you have the right to exist, to have all that the Creator created for you. No limitation whatsoever. So recognizing that you have that divine spark, recognizing that the divine spark has its own agenda, you are but one of the whole facet of creation, and that the divine spark needs you to do that. If you think about, say, a diamond, and it's got a lot of facets, being, nicely cut away, cleaving away. If you had this massive diamond with all, with the first part people that evolved and whatever, you would have, lots of cuts and lots of things. But as you cut away, you cut more and more and more of the corners. So you start to get more and less angles, and more of a circle all the way around a sphere, right? And when the sphere is totally circular with no bounces off, that's when we've reached transcendence. And that's when everyone in this world will move beyond. But each time we cut away, each time we connect to that truth, that we are that divine spark and we choose our purpose, then we are there. We are there. So I want you to just take that moment to just kind of think about that And just kind of sit into that for a minute and go, that's interesting. And I really love you to listen to this again, because it is so important you let this sink in. And then the next part of really identifying where your North Star is, where your guiding star is about looking at your life's experiences. Looking at your life's experiences and seeing that every experience is a gift. Every experience is a gift. And allow yourself to kind of see it in the sense of see something that's not so helpful. And when you look at it now, there's learning. And what does that learning give you? And maybe if there's something that was really amazing and you were in flow, that's learning too. How do you channel it? So each of them, there's learning, even in good and bad. Very often we don't learn from the good, but often we don't learn from the bad. But it's less likely we learn from the good because we just happen to go into the flow of that. But actually, if you learn from the good and you look to channel, to bring together, to create, narrow in a way, you create force that allows things to move much, much faster, much, much quicker. So, yeah. So when you kind of get a sense of looking at your life in a particular way and looking at those lessons and looking for the gifts in both good and bad experiences, you start to get another idea. And looking at that excites you, it activates you, it makes you reduce the fear of doubt, and you start to begin to see more clearly. And as you see more clearly, doubt disappears because you become more and more aligned to what it is that you need to do. And you often then build more courage and become braver because it becomes not about you. It becomes about your commitment to the divine spark that is within you. That divine spark that wants you to expand. And what's really lovely is, as I was having this conversation with someone today, where I talked about the 4 stages, where I talked about you have come out of Ein Sof, which is out of the darkness comes the spark of light that comes into consciousness, that then comes into the knowing, and then the knowing, which is the feeling, the embodied feeling of something, and the consciousness comes together to create something that's solid. Something that's solid, that electricity is bound by electricity and only by electricity. And how it's bound, it creates this magnetic force, which allows it to keep you together, but also it brings others to you. It can repel, but it can also mainly, if you use it correctly, in flow, it will bring things to you because of this force, centrifugal magnetic force. So think about it that way. It's another way of thinking about it. It's good fun to think about that nothing is coincidental. Everything has a purpose. So, and when we truly can understand those 3 things, 4 things maybe, certainly the thing of knowing your purpose, knowing that you're the divine spark. Secondly, knowing that your experiences helped create things. And third, seeing the greatness of who you are. When we realize this, we realize that everything that we do, we are co-creating with the universe. And the more we co-create with it in the form that the universe is happy or expansive and it's growing and it's not causing us to contract, that universe will serve us always. Is that nice? But all of life is going to always serve you. How nice is that, to not have to flow, to not have to struggle? And as I said, unfortunately, when we think, feel, and act, what really happens and how I work with people Because when we think, feel, and act, it creates, remember, it creates a solidity, it creates a mass, a density, and that's our hardwiring. That's the hardwiring that we inherit in our brain. That's the hardwiring that we inherit after certain kinds of patterns that have been going a long time. So our neurology is the hardwire, and then we have our thoughts and our feelings, which are the result of the interaction of our patterns, of doing the pattern that then has an output. But we know that our thoughts and our feelings interact, they change the chemical component of the structure. And this is what I love to do. I love to work at that point where we find what is it that really makes a difference. And what really makes the difference is paying attention to creating a very strong foundation. When we create a very strong foundation, then we don't have to worry about things, because things in itself actually become much, much easier, more in flow. Yeah, much more in flow. So we look at the core mechanisms and we build sufficient energy in those core mechanisms. We want to put a lot of energy in, and that's really how we create mental fitness to get you out of stuckness. So connecting to this one key aspect that you are the divine spark, the individualized spark, and you're designed to get what you want. There is a life principle of abundance. There's no life principle of darkness. This tells me a story that I was reading today about the sun was overhearing two people talking about the darkness they were experiencing. And the sun was a little bit perplexed. And the sun said, what about this darkness? And the people said, well, you need to go and explore. You need to go and explore what the darkness is. And the sun went looking and looking and looking and looking and looking and looking and looking for the darkness. But it couldn't find it. And it came back and it said, I don't see any darkness. Well, would the sun ever be able to see darkness when the sun is only pure light? Probably not. And this is it. This is it. The sun, the whole universal principle is that there's an abundant universe. The abundant universe is there. We have to learn how to look for the light. We have to learn to look for the abundance. We have to learn to keep the consciousness of that there. And when we are aligned to the purpose, when we are aligned to doing our work to serve that inner spark, then we have our purpose. And our purpose, for that purpose, will lead us to the next step. So that kind of takes us to the end of the talk here. What would it be like if you could know your needs and desires are important to you and have others see them as well? Have the ability to hold your truth the whole day through and follow on that purpose that you demand. Know that you affect the world in a profound way despite your not knowing what your role might be right now. You may not know. Know deeply that you can become the fizz in your champagne that opens the doorway and creates for you the buzz which gives life to all you connect with. If anything here resonates with you, then you might want to have one of my complimentary breakthrough calls of Sovereign Way Breakthrough Call. This call is specially designed to help pull out what it is that is getting in the way and to look at what you really want and how you might be able to get that. And if it's a good fit, I'll show you a way forward on how we could co-create that together so that we could align your divine spark with purpose so that you can flow. How does that sound? I have 5 free breakthrough calls that's there, and I'll put a link below so that you can begin just to have a quick chat. and I would love, love, love to speak to you. Remember, they get booked pretty quickly. So I only have 5 a week. All right then, take care. Bye-bye. Have a lovely, 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 lovely weekend. Take care. Thank you, everybody. Sorry, I forgot to say thank you for coming. Thank you for coming.